Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Focus on Health. We know healthcare's role in healing body and mind, but what about our souls? With such a diverse patient population, it's becoming more important to include religious, cultural, and spiritual considerations in patient care. I'm Dr. Suzanne Steinbaum, and this is Focus on Health. Should a person's spirituality or faith be part of a quality healthcare experience? More and more hospitals are saying yes and realize that accommodating cultural or religious beliefs can result in better patient outcomes.
Being a patient really opened my eyes, and that's the only thing I could really do at the time when I was in a hospital bed paralyzed. My brain was working and my eyes were working.
Sven Gerlinger, Chief Experience Officer at onHealth, spent months in a hospital bed paralyzed, and during that time it was the human interactions and spiritual guidance he received, as well as the love of his family, that helped him get better. He learned a great deal about what was important to patients by being one.
I had Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I found myself in a hospital bed for 3 months, and with a very uncertain future at the time, with varying prognosis, and it's a difficult time to go through. And for me, it was a time to reflect on life. People that really were sensitive to my physical needs, to my emotional needs, were the ones that I remember fondly.
Those experiences have shaped how he and the North Shore LIJ Health System approach healthcare.
One of the core concepts of patient and family-centered care is trust and dignity, which involves that we listen to our patients, that we take their preferences and take their beliefs into consideration, and then make sure that we incorporate that into the care plan.
To try and cater to many different religious beliefs and cultures, Health has created many services and programs, including halal meals for Muslim patients, meditation rooms, Holy Communion distribution, bloodless surgeries at Forest Hills Hospital, and prayer services for several religions.
And then we have a lot of different services available to our patients, from the Shabbat elevator for our observant Jewish population, to various kosher meals for the patients, interfaith chapels and interfaith services for the patients and family members. One of the recent additions we've put in place at LIJ Medical Center is a wudu room for our Muslim population to prepare for prayer and to prepare for the reading of the Quran.
Health also has several chaplains throughout its facilities to help people with any spiritual or emotional needs they may have during their hospital stay.
Chaplains are a huge part of our health system, part of the patient experience. They are a safe haven, I believe, for the patients. They are able to provide our patients and families with comfort, with hope also, and they can be a great conduit to all the other services that we provide.
Meaning a person's spiritual needs can also affect their physical outcome during a hospital stay or other medical treatment. Patients should feel free to express how their spirituality might impact their treatment preferences and what kind of services they would like to receive.
We need to build the relationship with the patient, and if we know who they are and where they came from and what their goals are, and we can help them open up, actually. And that's a key aspect of building the relationship with our patients, to make sure that they are comfortable. It's very difficult for a patient to evaluate the medical experience, the medical knowledge, all the great things that we are so proud of, but it's very easy for them to evaluate how they were treated and how we treated them as a human being. And that's the treating a patient and their family as a whole person is important to do.
Coming up next, we'll follow a day in the life of a hospital chaplain.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Patients are in the hospital because of a medical crisis. As they struggle with their illness, a natural inclination is to ask, why me? Let's visit with the professionals who are called into service when a medical crisis is accompanied by a crisis of faith.
Each day, John Overvold, Director of Chaplaincy Services for Northwell Health, is tasked with meeting the spiritual and emotional needs of patients, their families, as well as doctors, nurses, and other staff at the health organization's 21 hospitals. With the help of a dozen chaplains, 3 residents, and 11 intern chaplains from the Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist faiths, Reverend Overvold and his team offered comfort to more than 178,000 patients last year. These chaplains set aside their personal beliefs at the door of a patient's room and immerse themselves in the spiritual worldview of the patient or patient's family.
My father was a parish pastor. My mother was actually a Navy nurse in World War II, which is where they met. In the work that I currently do, I've combined their professions, and I hold them close in what I do now. It's a nice legacy to have. I grew up very much in the inner city in Portland, and had the experience of being in a very culturally diverse area, and probably one of the richest experiences I've had.
Religious faith is the foundation for a chaplain's work, but spiritual care is at its heart.
Spiritual care really is a way that somebody copes with the challenge of illness. And so for somebody coming into the hospital and really dealing with a physical challenge, it's often the spiritual that may help to carry us and be a strength for us. When we're physically challenged, often it's a power greater than ourselves that we reach out to and can really help us.
Rabbi Daniel Coleman plays a major role in Reverend Overvold's chaplaincy team. While the rabbi himself is Orthodox, he tends to the spiritual needs of patients from every religious denomination.
Everyone connects to the Almighty or to a higher power or to themselves in their own unique way, and I'm there just to be a witness, to honor that. So that's my hope, that I can help them, both connect to them as one human being to another, as one person in the divine image to another. As you can see on my badge, I have chaplain. I don't even have rabbi on my ID badge. My role here as staff chaplain is really supporting patients. We always say patients first, but obviously the families and staff of all faiths.
Gina Mitchell was diagnosed at birth with sickle cell anemia. Because of her life-threatening blood disorder, she faces frequent hospitalizations. Gina has come to treasure the time she spends with the rabbi.
Rabbi Coleman is an amazing man. Well, I call him Rabbi Daniel. We're on a first-name basis. I met him about 5 years ago. He came into my room and asked if I would, wanted to talk. Usually I'm a bit standoffish when the chaplains would come and approach me to speak, but for some reason that day when he walked in my room, I wasn't. He just had a welcoming spirit about him that made me want to talk to him.
When Sion Goldstein was hospitalized during the Festival of Purim, which is a time for families to celebrate freedom over tyranny, he took great comfort in Rabbi Coleman's efforts to observe the traditions.
Sometimes a person feels alone, feels a little bit down, and the rabbi comes to visit, talks a few words with you. You know that there is a place with kosher food where you can warm up your food, you can get anything that you need, a book to read. This uplifts you and the person starts to feel better spiritually, and that helps also for the illness to go away also. I believe that.
Sadia Ahmed, a Muslim, is part of the health system's clinical pastoral education residency program. She usually sees about 20 patients a day and spends between 5 minutes to an hour, and sometimes more depending on the situation and needs of the patient.
There was one patient that she would wait for me. This was on the leukemia floor. She was dying, and she wouldn't talk, and she would keep her eyes closed every time I went. So I would just offer a prayer and I would leave because she was not responding. But The nurses said that she did, wake up and she could respond, but she didn't want to talk to anybody. She was probably very angry at her situation, or whatever the reason. And then one day I went and she responded. She nodded when I asked her a question, and that was such a breakthrough for me. This was maybe on my third or fourth visit.
Hospital chaplains are not just for the patient's spiritual needs, they also cater to the staff, nurses and doctors whose daily jobs can take an emotional toll. At LIJ Medical Center, 3 chaplains have joined together to form Team Lavender, whose mission is to provide compassion and comfort to medical staff who need support.
We focus on the patients, we focus on their families, but also a big part of our focus is a focus on the staff itself. Each of us try to make the staff our parish. In Team Lavender, we tried to form a program in which the staff, in moments of crisis, moments of stress, dealing with just simple human craziness, know that in the midst of all this, they can extend a hand for help, for assistance, for support, knowing that there'll be a hand stretched back to assist them, to support them, and to walk with them on their journey.
Team Lavender benefits employees because it gives them the opportunity to say how they feel, to express their feelings. It gives them a sounding board, and through spiritual comfort, they oftentimes find peace.
After it was established that there would be a Team Lavender, supervisors call us and say, we need a Team Lavender. Something happened on the floor and the nurses need a time out, as it were, to speak with us and to discuss their feelings and emotions.
My first experience with Team Lavender was interesting. We had a patient who was here for a long time. He was in the surgical intensive care unit, and when there were no more surgical issues, came to the medical ICU. There were a lot of family dynamics. His relatives were at the bedside every day, all day, and we're used to dealing with that. That's not an issue, but it became emotionally draining for the staff. Every day, interacting with the relatives, seeing their emotions, their dynamics, and they're concerned they have a critical patient, but at the same time they have family there.
If you can make even a small difference there, sometimes we're not able to take some things away, but we can make a difference if you are there with someone, taking the perspective of someone else, and being able to sometimes without words, sometimes it's just being silent and being there with them that amazes me. And I guess what helps in those situations too is the wonderful thing about this work is that sometimes months or weeks later, someone comes back and tells you what that meant.
Don't go away. After the break, we'll discuss how doctors are finding the right balance between the Hippocratic Oath and a patient's religious beliefs. Welcome back. Finding a balance between a patient's beliefs and a doctor's mission is not always an easy task. When a physician and a patient or their family disagree on things like medical treatments or end-of-life care due to religious beliefs, it can be hard to find a common ground. That's why it's crucial to incorporate education and understanding into the mix when it comes to religion and healthcare. Joining me now are Dr. Gregory Capinos, a neurointensivist at North Shore University Hospital, Lynn Stoller, Assistant Program Director, and Reverend Mark E. Fowler, the Managing Director of Programs, both from the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding, and Reverend John Mee Bay, Manager of Chaplaincy Education for the North Shore LIJ Health System. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Fowler, I want to start with you. Tell me a little bit about Tannenbaum and what you do there.
Well, Tannenbaum is a secular, non-sectarian, not-for-profit. We're based in Manhattan, And our mission is to combat religious prejudice. And we have 4 program areas, one in which we work with teachers so that we can prevent bullying that's bias-based or identity-based. One program in workplaces where we can work to make sure that workplaces are inclusive of religious beliefs and of non-religious beliefs. Conflict resolution program where we support and study the work of religiously motivated peace activists. We call them peacemakers in action, in active conflict zones like Nigeria and Syria around the world. And our healthcare program where we work with medical providers, both those in practice as well as those in training, to give them the skills and the tools that they need to proactively and respectfully interact with patients around the decisions that they're making based on their religious beliefs and practices.
So much about what you do is really about education and religious awareness.
Absolutely.
So Lynn, this was not always a part of the healthcare system. We didn't always consider patient spirituality or religious beliefs in dealing with patients. What happens when we ignore the spiritual needs of a patient? What goes on with people when this happens?
I think if we ignore the spiritual or religious beliefs of a patient, we're ultimately missing out on a huge part of what might define that patient in terms of the decisions that they make, their values, and their priorities. And especially in the United States, where the vast majority of Americans believe in God or some form of a higher power, so over 90%. And that means that the majority of patients that are coming through the door are going to be accessing, looking to their religion, their spirituality, their faith in some way, whether it's about the healthcare decisions that they're making or simply how they define respectful care in a healthcare setting. So it could be anything from a patient that has concerns around modesty and is having a physical exam done, or a patient that has decided, that is diabetic and has decided, this year I want to fast for a religious holiday or a holy day. And what might that mean in terms of their health if they're not having a conversation with their healthcare provider? And then finally, when you're looking at someone that's going through an illness or injury, their faith can really be something that they want to look to access and lean on as a source of support and strength.
We might not think about it, but probably in the healthcare setting and with patients, this issue is probably more important than we've ever really talked about before. So you talked about these 4 areas that Tannenbaum works with. Do you think that we've pushed the needle forward in terms of education when it does come to the healthcare system?
I think we are pushing the needle forward, but we're also doing that very slowly. Tannenbaum has produced a number of educational resources over the last 5 years. We published a book called The Medical Manual for Religio-Cultural Competence, which makes it much easier for medical practitioners to get a head start on addressing the needs of patients. We have a CME that we created for doctors. We've created educational curricula for medical students and for residency programs. But one of the things I think that will make a difference is the ongoing recognition that this is a critical part of care. One of the controversies, if you will, is there are some people who recognize that the religious beliefs of their patients and the ways in which that affects their decision making is a critical issue, but they don't necessarily have the training that they would like. Yeah. And then there are still some people who do not believe that the religious beliefs or even the non-religious beliefs and how those are impacting a patient's decision making is something that they should even bother with. And so as long as that controversy keeps going on, then what efforts we make sometimes will get diverted.
When I was in training, this was a non-conversation. We always believed that medicine was over here and religion was over here. Right. And the truth is, Reverend Bay, it's not always on the same side. So how do you deal with physicians? How do you deal with educating physicians and patients and the chaplains in addressing this issue?
I think medicine and religion speaks different languages, that's for sure. But we all need to know that we have the common goal, which is to understand the patient, what's important for them.
There's a common goal that we're trying to reach, and it's just really connecting the words, making that language clear.
Yes, chaplains consider our work in healthcare as translation between the word of the patient and the word of hospital medicine.
As a neurointensivist, in no other place is it more prevalent than where you are, dealing with the issue between maybe what the family needs or wants from the spiritual or religious perspective versus what the doctor thinks is best for the patient. How do you reconcile that?
We want the best for the patient, and both camps are on the same side. The problem is, the words we use, and sometimes when actually, as you pointed out in your question, actually the family is actually not having the best interest of the patient in their mind, but they have their own needs because they're facing a very dramatic event, an event like a traumatic brain injury. A young patient suddenly becomes a victim and they never had a discussion about their values. Suddenly the family has to be facing that very difficult situation, and they are not grieving, but they are like in pain themselves, and therefore they are blurred and they put their own needs to be recomforted, feeling like we need to do heroic measures, we need to do everything just to feel good themselves. Yeah. When actually we need to, as a doctor, we always during those discussions reorient the discussion towards it's not a matter of like what medicine says and what faith is telling you and what you want. No, all those things are not even on the table. What we should really talk about is I understand it's difficult for you, but what is his values, right. As you said, the religious and non-religious beliefs. Tell me more about what he wants, or he or she, your loved one, or what do they want, what defines them, and then we will make a decision based on those values.
I think it's so interesting, and I think we're all sort of saying this. At no other time is this issue more heightened than the end-of-life issues. And certainly when a family has not had the opportunity to talk to their loved one, but the family really tries to hold on to their spirituality, to their religion, what they believe is the best thing. But the conversation isn't necessarily about that, although we need to be sensitive. It's about what's truly best for the patient, right? Mm-hmm. And I love that it's really about translating the words so the patients get it, and the family's patients, and the doctor gets it also. But what happens at end of life when the family says, I want everything done? And as physicians, sometimes we'll know that's not the right thing to do. How do we have that conversation? I'm going to pose it to you, and then Reverend Bay, I'd love to know what you think.
I feel like a lot of family members, when there is a tension with the medical team, it's very rarely the opposite, but often it is the doctors want to do less invasive and less aggressive care, and the family wants heroic measures or everything to be done, including surgery and putting tubes in every orifice and undignifying that maybe last week of life of that poor victim. So when there is a tension like this, what happens is that they again think about what they think is keeping hope and delivering everything just to make them feel good. But actually we reorient the discussion with them and say again, no, we need to focus on tell me what he thought when he visited his cousin that was in a nursing home. What did he or she say when she saw somebody that was very disabled, like able to walk before and then after an injury was not able to do anything anymore? What did he think about that level of very poor abilities?
Quality of life. You really tried to address that issue. And Reverend Bay, when this happens, because it happens often, how do you talk to the family?
We chaplains try to offer non-judgmental and non-anxious presence to them, to patient and to family and to staff, and to help them identify what they need and what they want spiritually and emotionally, what is struggle they are doing. And also culturally they are struggling a lot. What is the best decision for them? Sometimes it's very hard to, sometimes family and patients has different idea about quality of life.
Right.
And for family, I don't want to lose you. I want to spend time with you even one more day, one more hour. And patient says, I don't want to see you suffering like this. I'm okay with my own dying and death. So chaplain hear what really they want and they need, and try to connect.
It's that common ground.
It's
Make
what's
the
the common ground, and at the end, is of course it's more about their love and their life and hope, and so so connect the dots.
Reverend Fowler, do you think this should stay in the legal world? That we should talk about advanced directives, that this should be a legal document versus having this spiritual and religious conversation at the time?
Another part of that education can be talking with families about, in the event of something happening, what would you want? And talking about the importance, but also the machinery, if you will, of an advance directive and a living will. And what do these documents actually do? Who do you want to make decisions for you if you're not able to make them for yourself? And I think, to the point, the idea of the competing needs, we tend to think about at Tannenbaum that this is not just the experience at the end of life. It definitely is very dramatic at the end of life if there's been no preparation and if there have been no conversations.
And how do we push this message forward?
Well, I think that it has to be a multi-pronged approach. And the first piece coming in, which is the work that Tannenbaum does around education. So we've done a lot of work to try to push this form of education within medical schools, within nursing programs, so that this becomes an integrated part of how a healthcare provider learns to practice. And then also making sure that for those that are already out in the field, that they're having these conversations. We've been talking a lot about communication. So making sure that patients are aware that this is something that they can bring up and talk about with their physicians.
I think this conversation is one that we need to have more of. I think all of you are ambassadors of really sending this message out. It is so important that everyone understands this is not just about end-of-life care. This is about what you believe. And really talking to your family, talking to your doctor is so important. And from the physician's perspective, we've got to be a little bit more sensitive. I can't thank you all enough for being here with me today. And let's keep this conversation going. It's really important and worth it. Thanks so much for joining us today. The show may be over, but let's keep the conversation going. Follow us on Twitter and share your photos or comments at Focus on Health TV, #Focus on Health. I am Dr. Suzanne Steinbaum. Join us next week for another episode of Focus on Health, where we're always focused on your health.